I'm Victoria Chen, and at 58 years old, I thought I understood my parents completely. After 3 decades of caring for them, supporting their dreams, and putting my own life on hold, I learned a painful truth about family loyalty. My father, Robert, was 79, and my mother, Patricia, was 76. They had always been practical people, shaped by years of modest living and careful saving. I grew up watching them count every penny, never taking vacations, always preparing for tomorrow. As their only daughter, I naturally assumed I would inherit whatever they had worked so hard to build. Then Marcus came into their lives. He was 42, charming, and had recently married into a wealthy family. His wife Elena was elegant and refined, the kind of woman who made everyone feel slightly inadequate just by walking into a room. They had 2 teenage children who called my parents Grandma and Grandpa within weeks of meeting them. I watched it happen slowly. Sunday dinners at my small apartment became Sunday brunches at Marcus and Elena's spacious home. My calls went unanswered while my parents gushed about their new grandson's soccer games and their new granddaughter's piano recitals. The son they never had, they said. The complete family they always wanted. It hurt more than I care to admit. One Tuesday afternoon, my mother called me to their house. My father sat in his leather chair, the one I had bought him for his 75th birthday. My mother perched on the sofa, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Both wore expressions I had seen before, during family meetings about serious decisions. My mother spoke first. Her voice was steady, rehearsed. "The money is gone, Victoria. We've transferred everything to Marcus's family." I felt the room tilt slightly. Everything, my father confirmed. The savings, the investments, the property we bought in Colorado, it's all in trust for Marcus's children now. I sat down without being invited. My legs simply refused to hold me anymore. Why? My mother's smile was almost pitying. "You should have been more supportive of our new family. Marcus has given us what we always wanted, a real sense of belonging. His children need security for their future. You're independent, you have your career, you'll be fine." My career as a public librarian had been stable but never lucrative. I had turned down promotions that required relocation because my parents needed me nearby. I had spent my savings on their medical bills, their home repairs, their comfort. "I see," I said quietly. My father leaned forward, his expression smug in a way I had never seen before. "We expected you to be more understanding, Victoria. Family means sacrifice. Surely you learned that from us." "Oh, I did," I replied. "I learned it very well." That was April. By June, I had accepted my new reality. I sold the small condo I owned and moved into a modest apartment. I picked up extra shifts at the library. I stopped attending family gatherings where I was clearly no longer wanted. Life became smaller, quieter, but also strangely peaceful without the constant disappointment. Then September arrived with an unexpected letter. The envelope was cream-colored, heavy, expensive. The return address was Zürich, Switzerland. Inside was a letter from Hoffman Private Banking, written in formal but clear English. "Dear Miss Victoria Chen, we are writing to inform you of an account established in your name by your late grandmother, Mrs. Elisabeth Chen, in 1978. According to the terms she specified, this account was to remain sealed until you reached the age of 55, or until both of your parents attempted to claim inheritance on your behalf, whichever came first. Our records indicate that your parents recently made inquiries about your grandmother's estate. This action has triggered the release conditions. You are hereby notified that you are the sole beneficiary of this account. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to arrange the necessary documentation and transfer procedures." I read the letter 3 times. My grandmother Elisabeth had passed away when I was 26. I remembered her as a quiet woman who spoke rarely but observed everything. She had emigrated from Germany after the war and married my grandfather in San Francisco. I knew she had money from her family in Europe, but my parents always insisted that fortune had been lost during the war. Apparently they were mistaken. Or they had lied. I called the number provided. A woman named Heidi answered, her English accent precise and professional. "Miss Chen, we've been expecting your call. Your grandmother was quite specific in her instructions. She wanted to ensure her estate went to someone who would appreciate its value, not squander it on false loyalty." "How much are we discussing?" I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. "With accumulated interest over 47 years, the current value is approximately 12.7 million Swiss francs. In American dollars, roughly 13.8 million. The room spun again, but this time from shock rather than grief. My grandmother left this for me? Why didn't anyone tell me? Your parents were named as temporary trustees until you came of age. They were informed of the account's existence, but not its full value or conditions. Mrs. Chen was, and I say this with respect, quite clever in protecting her granddaughter's future. Over the following weeks, I learned the full story. My grandmother had indeed been wealthy. Her family owned textile factories in Bavaria before the war. She had smuggled money and bonds out of Germany piece by piece, establishing accounts in Switzerland under different names. She had watched my parents carefully over the years and decided they had become too focused on money, too willing to manipulate for personal gain, so she created a test. If they tried to claim inheritance meant for me, they would lose access to everything and trigger my full inheritance instead. They had failed her test spectacularly. The paperwork took 6 weeks. Heidi guided me through every step with patience and precision. In November, the first transfer appeared in my American bank account. $6 million, with the remainder to follow in structured payments for tax purposes. I sat in my tiny apartment, staring at the numbers on my screen, and cried. Not from joy, though I felt that too. I cried because my grandmother had seen me, truly seen me, even decades before I needed her help. I didn't tell my parents immediately. I needed time to think, to plan, to decide who I wanted to become with this unexpected fortune. December brought my decision into focus. I contacted a family lawyer and established a trust of my own. Then I invited my parents to lunch at a quiet restaurant downtown, just the three of us. They came, curious about my sudden invitation after months of silence. We ordered food neither of us touched. My father drummed his fingers on the table. My mother checked her watch twice. Finally, I spoke. I received a letter from Switzerland, from Grandmother Elisabeth's bank. My mother's face went pale. My father stopped drumming. That's impossible, he said. We were told the account was empty, that everything was lost. You were told what grandmother wanted you to hear. She left her entire estate to me, with conditions. If you tried to claim my inheritance or manipulated family assets away from me, I would receive everything. You triggered those conditions when you transferred your savings to Marcus's family and when you inquired about grandmother's estate at the Swiss bank. But we're your parents, my mother whispered. Surely you'll share with us, with your family. I looked at them both, these people who had raised me and then discarded me when something shinier came along. You taught me an important lesson about family. You showed me that love has conditions, that loyalty can be transferred to whoever serves your needs best. I'm simply applying what I learned. Victoria, please, my father started. I held up my hand. I'm not cruel like you were. I've established a trust that will provide you both with a modest monthly income, enough to live comfortably, but not extravagantly. The house you signed over to Marcus? You can buy it back if he agrees to sell, but that's between you and him. The rest of grandmother's fortune will be used as she intended, to support someone who understands the value of genuine kindness. My mother began to cry. Real tears this time, not the calculated kind she used during our last conversation. We made a terrible mistake, she said. We were foolish, we were greedy. Marcus and Elena stopped calling us once the transfers were complete. They got what they wanted and moved on. We have no one now. You have each other, I said gently. And you have the monthly income I'm providing. But you don't have me, not in the way you once did. That relationship died when you chose to humiliate me in your living room. I stood to leave. My father grabbed my wrist, his grip weak but desperate. What will you do with all that money? I'm going to travel. I'm going to see all the places grandmother came from. I'm going to donate to causes she cared about. And I'm going to build a life that honors the woman who loved me enough to protect my future, even from my own parents. I pulled my wrist free gently and walked away. Behind me, I heard my mother sobbing and my father trying to comfort her with empty words. The next 6 months transformed my life in ways I never imagined. I retired from the library with a generous donation that funded literacy programs for years. I traveled to Germany and Switzerland, walking the streets my grandmother once knew. I established scholarships for young women studying library science and education. I also learned about Grandmother Elisabeth in ways I never had while she was alive. In Zürich, Heidi arranged for me to meet with historians who knew my grandmother's story. She had been part of an underground network that helped Jewish families escape Germany, using her family's business connections as cover. The money she saved wasn't just family wealth. It was evidence of a life lived with courage and purpose. That's when I understood. She hadn't just left me money. She had left me a legacy of choosing right over easy, of protecting those who deserved protection, of seeing clearly through manipulation and greed. One afternoon in March, I received a call from Marcus. His voice was tight, uncomfortable. "Your parents are struggling," he said. "They keep calling us, asking for help. Elena and we feel responsible somehow." "You're not responsible for my parents' choices," I told him. "They made their decisions, believing they were backing a winning horse. They learned too late that loyalty born from greed disappears just as quickly. Would you consider helping them more? They're elderly, they're suffering. I'm providing them with $1,500 a month, Marcus. That's more than many people live on. If they're suffering, it's because they're comparing their current situation to the wealth they threw away. That's not poverty, that's regret." He was quiet for a moment. "You're harder than I expected." "No," I replied. "I'm exactly as hard as the situation requires. But here's something you should know. When they needed medical care, when they needed rides to appointments, when they needed someone at 3 a.m. because they were scared and alone, I was there. Every single time. For 30 years. Where were you during those times, Marcus?" We didn't know them then." "Exactly. You knew them when it was convenient, when it benefited you. That's not family. That's transaction. And now you're learning what happens when the transaction ends." I hung up feeling neither angry nor satisfied. Just tired of explaining basic human decency to people who should have learned it decades earlier. But not everyone in this story remained unchanged by what happened. In April, I received an unexpected visitor. Elena stood at my apartment door, without Marcus, without her usual polished confidence. She looked smaller somehow, more human. "May I come in?" I stepped aside and let her enter. She sat on my simple couch, looking around at my modest space with something like wonder. "This is lovely," she said quietly. "Peaceful." I waited. "I owe you an apology, Victoria. I pushed Marcus to pursue your parents' wealth. I thought it would secure our children's future, but all it did was teach them that manipulation is acceptable if the prize is big enough. My daughter asked me last week why we don't visit Grandma Patricia and Grandpa Robert anymore. When I tried to explain, I heard how hollow it all sounded. Children are perceptive, I agreed. Marcus and I are separating. Not because of the money, though that exposed cracks I'd been ignoring. We built our marriage on appearances and acquisition. When your parents' money disappeared and your grandmother's fortune went to you, we had nothing left but our own flaws reflected back at us. I'm sorry to hear that. Don't be. It's the most honest thing to happen to us in years." She met my eyes directly. "I came to ask if you would consider meeting with your parents, not for their sake but perhaps for your own. Anger and distance can protect us, but they can also trap us in the past." I thought about her words long after she left. Was I trapped? Had I simply traded one prison for another, exchanging obligation for resentment? In May, I invited my parents to meet me at a park near where I grew up. Not the elegant parks in wealthy neighborhoods, but the small community park where my father taught me to ride a bicycle and my mother packed sandwiches for summer picnics. They arrived looking diminished, older than their years. My mother's hair had gone completely white. My father walked with a cane I hadn't seen before. We sat on a bench, 3 people who shared blood but little else anymore. "Thank you for coming," I said. "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past months." "Victoria, if this is about more money," my father began. "It's not about money. It never was, really. It was about being seen, being valued for who I am, rather than what I could provide." My mother took my hand hesitantly. "We were terrible to you. We let greed and status blind us to what really mattered. Marcus seemed so successful, so confident. We thought aligning with him would give us the family experience we always wanted. We were fools." "Yes, you were," I agreed. "But you were also my parents once. You taught me to read. You took care of me when I was sick. You showed up to every school play, even when you were tired. That version of you existed. I need to believe it existed." My father wiped his eyes roughly. Is there any way back from this?" I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm willing to try something. Not the relationship we had, where I sacrificed everything and you took it for granted. Something different, something healthier. I'll visit once a month, we'll have dinner together. You'll tell me about your lives honestly, without pretense or manipulation. And slowly, maybe we can build something worth having. My mother began crying in earnest now, her shoulders shaking. I didn't comfort her immediately. Some tears need to fall freely, without rescue. But after a moment, I put my arm around her. She leaned into me, this woman who had given birth to me, raised me, and then cast me aside. She was flawed and human and small, and she was still my mother. We sat together in that park as spring afternoon faded into evening. We didn't solve everything, wounds this deep don't heal quickly. But we made a start, fragile and uncertain as it was. Over the following year, our monthly dinners became a ritual. My parents talked about their regrets, their fears about aging, their genuine sorrow over losing me. I talked about my travels, the organizations I was supporting, the ways I was honoring Grandmother Elisabeth's memory. Slowly, something like trust began to grow again. Not the blind trust of childhood, but the wary, earned trust between adults who have hurt each other and chosen to try again. I also did something unexpected. I invited Marcus and Elena's children to have lunch with me, without their parents. Sarah was 16, thoughtful and quiet. David was 14, energetic and blunt. Over pizza, David asked me directly, "Why are you being nice to us? Our parents used you because you're not responsible for your parents' choices," I told him. And because my grandmother taught me that the measure of a person isn't what they do when life is easy, but how they respond when it's hard. You kids got caught in adult drama. That wasn't fair to you. Sarah looked at me with tears in her eyes. Grandma Patricia and Grandpa Robert were nice to us. We didn't understand what was happening until it was over. I miss them. You could call them, I suggested. Not because your parents tell you to or because there's money involved, but because relationships have value beyond transactions. If you want to know them as people, that door is open. 6 weeks later, Sarah and David visited my parents on their own, taking the bus across town. My mother called me that evening, her voice bright with genuine joy for the first time in months. "They came because they wanted to," she said in wonder. "Not because someone made them or because they wanted something, just because they wanted to see us. That's what real family looks like," I told her gently. "Now you're learning what you threw away when you chose money over connection." My father got on the phone. "We're grateful, Victoria. For the monthly dinners, for the allowance you provide, for introducing the kids back into our lives. We don't deserve your kindness." "Probably not," I agreed. "But Grandmother Elisabeth taught me that deserving isn't always the point. Sometimes kindness is its own reward. Just don't mistake my forgiveness for forgetfulness." I remember everything. I'm just choosing to move forward differently. Now, 2 years after that devastating conversation in my parents' living room, my life looks nothing like I imagined it would. I spend half the year traveling, often visiting places connected to my grandmother's history. I've funded a memorial in Bavaria honoring the network of people who helped Jewish families escape. I also established the Elizabeth Chen Foundation, which provides support for adult children caring for aging parents. We offer financial assistance, counseling services, and legal advice. Because I learned firsthand how caregiving can trap people in cycles of obligation and resentment, and I wanted to create something better. My relationship with my parents remains complicated. Some months are easier than others. There are still moments when old hurts surface, when I remember their smug faces as they told me I wasn't good enough for their love. But there are also moments of genuine connection, of laughter over shared memories, of honest conversation about mortality and meaning. Marcus and Elena divorced as Elena predicted. Marcus moved to another state, chasing a business opportunity that may or may not be legitimate. Elena stayed local and rebuilt her life with remarkable grace. She volunteers at the library now, in the children's section, reading to kids every Saturday morning. We've become unlikely friends, bonded by our shared experience of learning hard truths about family and loyalty. Last month, on what would have been Grandmother Elisabeth's 123rd birthday, I stood in front of the memorial in Bavaria. The stone was simple, elegant, engraved with names of the people she had helped save, and a single sentence in German and English. She chose courage when comfort was easier. That's become my guiding principle too. Not the grand gestures or the dramatic confrontations, but the daily choice to act with integrity even when it's uncomfortable. To be kind without being weak. To forgive without forgetting. To honor the past while building a better future. My parents joined me in Germany for that ceremony. They were frail now, needing more assistance than they wanted to admit. But they stood beside me as I placed flowers at the memorial, and my mother whispered something I never expected to hear. I wish I had been more like her. She saw clearly what really mattered. We saw only what we wanted. There's still time, I told her, not to change the past, but to live better now. That's all any of us can do. We stood together in the German sunshine, 3 generations connected by blood and money and mistakes, and finally by something resembling understanding. It wasn't the fairy tale ending where everyone reconciles perfectly and all wounds heal. Real life doesn't work that way, but it was honest. And after years of manipulation and pretense, honest felt like enough. As I flew back to the United States, I thought about all the ways this story could have ended. I could have been crushed by my parents' betrayal, bitter and broken. I could have used my inheritance as a weapon, making them suffer as they made me suffer. I could have cut them off completely, leaving them to face old age alone. Instead, I chose the harder path. The path my grandmother would have chosen. I set boundaries while leaving doors open. I held people accountable while offering grace. I protected myself while extending compassion. It's exhausting sometimes, this commitment to living with integrity. It would be easier to be hard or soft, all anger or all forgiveness. The middle ground requires constant recalibration, constant effort. But when I look at what I've built, the foundation helping caregivers, the scholarships supporting students, the relationships slowly healing, I know it's worth it. My grandmother didn't just leave me money. She left me a blueprint for living meaningfully in a world that often rewards shortcuts and selfishness. And that inheritance, the one measured in values rather than dollars, turned out to be worth far more than $13.8 million ever could be. Though I admit, having the $13.8 million definitely helps make the values part easier to maintain. My parents are older now, frailer, facing the reality of their final years. The trust I established provides for their care, including the home health assistance they now need. Sarah visits them weekly, and David sends long emails about his college experiences. They have what they claim to want, a sense of family and connection. But it's built on honesty now, not manipulation. On genuine affection, not financial obligation. It's smaller than the fantasy family they tried to construct with Marcus and Elena, but it's real in ways that fantasy never was. As for me, I'm still learning what it means to live freely after decades of obligation. I'm dating someone, a widowed professor I met at a conference on women's history. He knows my whole story and loves me not despite it but including it, scars and all. I'm writing too, documenting my grandmother's story for a historical archive. Future generations deserve to know about the woman who saved lives while building a fortune, who valued courage over comfort, who protected her granddaughter's future from beyond the grave. This story doesn't have a tidy ending because life rarely does. There are still hard days when old resentments surface. There are still moments when I wonder if I'm doing the right thing, if I'm too forgiving or not forgiving enough. But I'm learning to sit with that uncertainty, to trust that choosing kindness, even imperfect kindness, is better than choosing bitterness. To believe that my grandmother saw something in me worth protecting, worth investing in, worth loving. And on the days when that belief falters, I look at my bank statements and think, well, at least I'm crying in comfort. It's not profound wisdom, but it's honest. And honest, I've learned, is exactly enough. Thank you for listening to my story. If this journey of family, forgiveness, and unexpected fortune resonated with you, I would deeply appreciate your like and subscribe to hear more stories of life's complicated truths. Please share this with anyone who might need a reminder that integrity and kindness can coexist with boundaries and self-protection. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you faced similar family challenges? How did you navigate the balance between forgiveness and self-preservation? Your stories matter, and I'm here to listen. Until next time, remember that the greatest inheritance isn't money. It's the wisdom to know who you are and the courage to live accordingly.